So regular viewers of the channel know that I lead, now because I live in the city you can't call it a self-sufficient lifestyle, and it's not self-sufficient, but I do contribute considerably to our own food stocks and things like that. What I'd like to do is have a little bit of chat about that lifestyle. So let's think of, we'll call it self-sufficient, knowing full well the limits of that, and it's not. But let's talk about self-sufficient living in the city, and what does that mean? Is it a big pain in the you-know-what because you're working all day every day, or what does it look like? G'day folks, Andy here from McDowall Manor. Retired in my early 50s, 52, and the reason I did that was, well, a couple of reasons, but not the least was my old dad had cancer then. I wanted to be able to help look after him, and then after he passed away, my old mum, now she's 87, so I have a fair bit of a caring role. One of my boys needs a bit of a caring role as well, so I provide that too. But the long and short of that is, a little while after I'd given up work, I was talking to a mate of mine, Chris. And Chris, I was worrying at the time about how am I going to go now that the income's decreased. And Chris said to me, well, Andy, you can either increase your income or decrease your outgoings, and either one pretty much is going to achieve the same thing. And that sort of stuck with me, which was a lot of what got me into this semi-self-sufficient living. And then I discovered pretty quickly that you're talking about the absolute freshest organic produce that you'll ever buy or eat or get from anywhere. And I found that we started eating with the seasons. We certainly don't buy food, like, in terms of pre-prepared meals. I tend to make everything, and like I say, I use a lot of seasonal ingredients, so our diet changes in the year again now. I've lost, well, probably 15 kilos as a result. Never felt better. I was on blood pressure medications because I did have some fairly stressful jobs. They're halved. So overall, certainly in terms of my health and well-being, self-sufficiency has really treated me well. I was listening to a radio show the other day that was talking about 65% of people's waste that goes to landfill is actually organics. Well, that 65% in our case doesn't go to landfill. We compost and feed to the chickens and the worms and all that sort of stuff. So environmentally, and I noticed it, like I really started seeing very quickly, where I used to have a bin that was overflowing, one of those big tote bins. I'm lucky if it's half full now, and it's all bloody packaging. So not only have I got more healthy, but I think probably in terms of how we treat the planet, it's got a lot more healthy as well. The number one complaint is, well, geez, Andy, it must be a hell of a lot of work looking after all these plants. Actually, it's not. That's one of the big messages I want to try and get across. In terms of the garden itself, I probably spend about 5 minutes a day out, or 10 minutes a day. Now by that I mean working, so I'm actually actively walking around. If I find a problem with a plant, I'll do whatever requires to be done, spray it, squash the bugs, do whatever to fix it. But like I say, 5 or 10 minutes a day. Now, I'm not counting in that when I spend 5 or 10 minutes a day. Now, I can see there's going to be aphids on that. There, bud. Because there's ants on there. So, I just wipe them off and squash them. Do you count that as work? I guess so. So anyway, we've got that's kind of stuff happening. I'm not counting if I spend 20 minutes outside late in the afternoon sipping on a homemade beverage, watching chickens walk. You can't call that work, let's be honest. So there's one thing I'd like to dispel. I've got a lot of plants, as regular viewers know. No, not a lot of work at all. So if we increase that first 5 minutes, let's call it 10 minutes. And let's say it's twice a day, because I've got critters. So I spend 5 minutes. Oh, you don't eat that egg, you bugger. I spend 5 minutes looking after the critters. You can see I've got to replace food, I check water, I have a quick scan over the birds to make sure that nothing hideous has happened, and that's about that really. In summer I'll throw food in for the fish every day. Given that it's winter, I haven't had to do that for ages. If I do it once a week, I'd be surprised it's only because the days are warming up. So even with critters, we're still not talking a lot of work. And I'm discounting the fun factor. As you just saw, I've got birds that don't mind a pat. They're quite used to me handling them. Is it really work? I don't know. I guess we'll call it work and err on the safe side, hey? I normally have a seedling or cutting area that I keep going. Bugger all work in that. When I empty the quail waters, I usually tip them in these containers. That way I don't ever have to water. That little guy there is a yellow flowering bush that starts with C. I can't remember its proper name. I've never really heard of it. I think it's a relative of some sort of chrysanthemum. But anyway, it's to attract beneficial insects, so that's just another thing I'm trying. Is that work? I don't know. Harvested a big bag of pigeon peas. Now, I use them the same way as most folks use lentils, so I actually call my pigeon pea trees, they're the lentil bushes. Yeah, I'll give you, that one was definitely work. I probably spent about all of 10 minutes out there. You can see though I haven't potted them yet. I reckon there's probably a good half an hour or so. I'll wait till my grandson comes over and we'll just quietly sit somewhere and pod them and have a yak. Here's another piece of work. Now we're getting into the things that was originally tempting me to start this video. So it's not things you think of automatically when you think self-sufficient and growing in your own yard. I don't buy booze, as you know. I tend to make my own. So I had to spend half an hour this morning. I ducked out to the home brew shop, bought a range of a couple of different beers and some yeast for a couple of bouts of spirits. It took me all of about 30 minutes. I had a good yak with the bloke behind the bar because the shop wasn't busy, so why not? I'm doing it tough, I'm telling you. Now, so far I haven't included projects. Now that was all full of begonias and stuff in there. Honestly, you couldn't see the ground. Well, Rosie's obviously got in there, and yes, they were in the bottom of the aquaponics bed too, the buggers. Rosie's got in there and cleaned that out. Now she would have spent at least a good solid half an hour doing that. So, you know, things like that pop up. How often? Maybe once a month, I guess, but often, see, you don't really notice it because it usually happens in change of seasons, and so you're just refreshing the gardens. It becomes like a habit that you don't even think of as work, really. And in an odd kind of way, it's always sort of interesting and exciting because it's when I get to plant out what new crops I'm going to put in and think it all through, you know. And regular viewers will know that I do harvest all of my rainwater, so that all gets used. It's really good for the fish because I don't have to dechlorinate it or anything, but it's also fantastic for all the gardens, you know, wonderful stuff. Let me show you something else. We have a 5.5 kilowatt, 5.6 I think, solar system on the roof that provides certainly nearly, well, all of our daytime energy. You know, when I get the money, I'll add some batteries and hopefully we'll have enough excess that we currently feed back to the grid to power ourselves at night as well. I've never wanted to make a profit. In fact, in a lot of ways, I'd be happy just to donate it back to the grid if it could cut the cost for some other poor bugger, you know. My aim was just to stop using coal-fired energy. So we've achieved some of that too. I always laugh. People say you can't have things like a dishwashing machine and stuff like that. You know, if you think you're self-sufficient or self-reliant, what a lot of bollocks. We run them in the day. We produce the electricity ourselves to run them, so it doesn't cost us anything. Why wouldn't I have one? And we've got one of those electricity washing machines, and heck, even an electricity dryer and electricity still. So this is from out of the pantry. I've just brought out the video for you. You know, we've taught ourselves, well, I've taught myself how to do things like, you know, save the dried beans. You've seen me do videos about canning leftover tomato sauce and chili sauce and drying chilies and making my own chili powder, all that sort of stuff. Occasionally I'll do a bit of foraging. These are Australian macadamia nuts. They're a beautiful nut. That was a tree that was on the corner of somebody's yard. The nuts were all over the ground on the public footpath. It was pretty obvious that no one was using them. So, you know, I took a shopping bag over and picked a heap up. Lovely nut. You know, is doing some of this work? Well, I suppose I spend time. Don't know that I'd call it work, but I guess when I can things, you know, I make proper sauces and I'm cooking, that's probably a little bit workish, although I do enjoy doing it just quietly. And the other thing that makes it much less workish is when you taste it, and it's so much bloody better than you can buy. It's gold. So I've noticed for a few of us on YouTube land that another important part of self-sufficiency is fixing things that broke. In the old days when I had a well-paying job, I'd just ring someone up and say, "Hey dude, come and fix it, will ya?" Well, them days are over. So I'll usually have a red hot crack at fixing most things myself. I figure even, look, if you only get 25% of them fixed, you're a quarter better off than you were before you started, aren't you? And you save a fortune doing it yourself if you can. I normally find it's a scary thought for those of us who aren't very practically minded, you know. I can run you a very mean detention centre, mean as in nice and good. I can stage statewide recovery efforts following natural disasters. Find it bloody hard to fix a door handle though. But the point is, you know, even though I'm not trained for it, I'll have a crack at it. Good as new. I've got to obviously put a little bit of touch-up paint on there where I had trouble getting that off. Had trouble getting it back on, to be honest. I had to hit it with a hammer a few times. I covered the hammer with a bit of cloth so it didn't scratch it. Cost to me $3. Let's be kind. That was for a flat bottom bolt that I needed. Let's be kind and say it cost me $5 in petrol. Hardware's pretty close, probably wouldn't have cost that, but let's say that $8. If I called someone over, it's $100 fee, a call out fee. They would have took one look at the door and said, "Oh, no, we'll just replace the whole mechanism because it's old and worn." It's bloody not, actually. It's quite new, but let's leave that aside. And it would have cost me $150. It's a bit interesting for a bloke who's no good at this stuff. Similar vein to the door, you might remember I do things like build my own quail house that allows us to, you know, to decorate how we want. Look, is it professional? No, of course it's bloody not. Look at this. There's bits that I never got quite back around to painting. Of course it's not bloody professional. Having said that, a new one would probably cost you around about $350. And mine probably would have cost me less than $50. Similar vein, I repurposed an old dog house, added a bit on the side there. I reckon it's a Kraken chook shed. That's where we lock them up at night just to keep them safe. Love it. Cost bugger all. Paint was probably the dearest part. Remember we built the aquaponics from scratch. Yeah, look, one fell over. One of the grow beds. I reused the wood to make the new grow bed and repurposed the liner so I didn't have to buy that. The tank we made ourselves. You know, it's probably $1,000 or $2 setup. We would have got away with that for, I don't know, just a couple of $100 really. Do I feel good about doing it myself? Damn straight I do. It's even all the more pleasing for a bloke who can't build bugger all. Well, it's lunchtime. I don't know what the rich people are eating, but us poor folks, we're having freshly made homemade oat risotto. It's got some corn in it. I'm not sure if you can see. It's got homegrown cherry tomatoes scattered through it. Normally I'd have some chopped up shallots and stuff in there. I use red onion because the south side of the yard's not producing me shallots like it was. You know, give it a couple of months, she'll be booming again. Fantastic, you know. You can't buy this stuff, fair dinkum. I mightn't be rolling in dough, but I'm bloody rolling in risotto. My Rosie's got visitors coming over for lunch tomorrow. It looks like we're going to have some crusty flatbread. That's an Annabelle book, that one, Annabelle Langbean. She does a good loaf. Let's have a look at it. So one of the things we have will be that rosemary type focaccia. Imagine that, eh? It's got some potato base in there as well. So hopefully the guests will be impressed. I'm not sure what else Rosie's cooking. Obviously we're not just going to serve them a bit of bread. Oh lordy. Pretty soon I'm hoping to produce my own honey. Regular viewers will know that. I'm not in a rush. At the moment I'm really focused on, I'll try and swing you around, making hives so we preserve the little native bee species, you know. I was just thinking, maybe a much better term for what us city self-sufficient people do is not to call it self-sufficient at all, but to call it self-reliant. So we acknowledge, you know, well certainly I acknowledge I'm never going to produce everything I need, not in a tiny city bloody block of 600 square metres. But you can see we are drifting towards this gradual sense of being more self-reliant, where we know we're going to have, you know, decent amounts of food pop up. Not all the time. Do I have to go to the shop? Of course I have to. I haven't got room to grow flour or sugar or any of that. But gradually that's becoming less and less. So let's go with the self-reliant name, shall we? So if you're interested in a bit of self-reliance, even if you do live in the city like us, you know, maybe you want to have a think about subscribing to watch the crazy antics that we get up to. Really what I try to do on the channel is plot our progress. I'm always happy to show you our failures, because you learn just as much by failing as you do by you know, doing it properly the first time. You think about hitting the little bell if you subscribe, that way you'll get notified when new videos come up. Thanks heaps for watching. Always appreciate your comments, your likes, even your dislikes, I don't mind. You guys have a good weekend, folks. Enjoy. See ya.